The pressure of the 12th grade board exams is a weight that every student in India carries, but for Rishi, it felt like an anchor dragging him into the depths of despair. Originally from a quiet, dust-blown town in the heart of Rajasthan, he had spent the last 2 years in a cramped, windowless room in Jaipur. His life was a monotonous cycle of formulas, physics theorems, and cold tea. Today was the culmination of those 1,000 nights of study, the engineering entrance exam. It was his one chance to change his family's destiny, but fate seemed to have other plans. Rishi woke up to a silent alarm. His phone had died in the night, and by the time he realized the hour, the sun was already high, mocking him. Panic, cold and sharp, surged through his veins. He didn't even wash his face. He grabbed his admit card, jumped on his aging motorbike, and roared out into the streets. The exam center was Rajmal Senior Secondary School, a place located so far on the outskirts of the city that even the Google Maps blue line seemed to hesitate. As he sped away from the urban sprawl, the tall buildings replaced themselves with skeletal trees and abandoned colonial structures. The air grew strangely heavy, thick with the scent of dry earth and something metallic. When the school finally appeared through the heat haze, Rishi's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. The architecture was Gothic and oppressive, with high arched windows that looked like hollow eye sockets. He checked his watch. He was already 10 minutes late. He skidded to a halt at the rusted iron gates, his breath coming in ragged gasps. An old guard stood there, draped in a khaki uniform that looked a size too large. Rishi began to beg, tears prickling his eyes, pleading for a chance to enter. But the guard didn't scold him. Instead, he offered a slow, disturbing smile that stretched too wide across his weathered face. His eyes held a strange, predatory glint, as if he had been waiting decades for someone exactly like Rishi to arrive. Without a word, he stepped aside and gestured toward the main building. The interior of the school was unnervingly silent. The hallways were long and polished to a mirror shine, yet they felt cold, an impossible, bone-deep chill that defied the Rajasthani summer. Rishi ran toward his assigned hall, his footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. He found the room, slipped inside, and was met with a sea of bowed heads. No one looked up. The invigilator, a woman with her hair pulled back into a bun so tight it seemed to stretch the skin of her forehead, simply pointed to an empty desk. Rishi sat down, his hands trembling as he received the question paper. For the first 30 minutes, the world narrowed down to the tip of his pen. He worked with a feverish intensity, his mind pulling answers from the depths of his memory. He completed the first 4 complex problems with ease. At 10:35 a.m., he paused to catch his breath. He looked up at the teacher, expecting to see her pacing the aisles. Instead, she was standing perfectly still at the front of the room, her gaze fixed directly on him. Her eyes didn't blink. They were wide, glassy, and filled with a silent, screaming malice. Unsettled, Rishi looked back down at his paper to begin the 5th answer, but his blood turned to ice. The page was blank. The lengthy 4th answer he had just finished was there, but the space where he was supposed to start the 5th was empty, as if the ink had been sucked back into the pen. He checked his watch again, 10:35 a.m. He waited for the minute hand to move, but it remained frozen. It was then that he noticed the behavior of the other students. To his left, a boy was writing so hard that his pen snapped. Without missing a beat, the boy began to scrape his bare index finger against the wooden desk. Rishi watched in horror as the boy's skim wore away, followed by the nail, leaving a bloody, jagged trail on the wood. The boy didn't scream, he just kept writing with the exposed bone of his finger. Across the room, the madness spread like a contagion. A girl began to rhythmically slam her forehead against her exam board, her expression vacant even as blood began to mask her face. Another student was methodically pulling out her own hair and stuffing it into her mouth, chewing with a rhythmic, wet sound. Rishi tried to shout, to call out to the teacher, but she only smiled, a horrific, unnatural grin that began to tear at the corners of her mouth. Suddenly, a foul stench filled the room, the unmistakable, sickening smell of burning meat and sulfur. A wisp of smoke rose from the front row. A girl's uniform caught fire, but she didn't move. Within seconds, the fire jumped from desk to desk. The students began to bubble and blister, their skin peeling away in charred ribbons. The teacher's face began to melt, the flesh sliding off her skull like hot wax, revealing charred bone and teeth that glowed like embers. The silent room was suddenly filled with the collective, high-pitched screaming of 40 burning souls. "Stay with us," they wailed, their voices a distorted chorus of agony. "The exam isn't over." Rishi scrambled backward, knocking his desk over. The floor was no longer concrete, it was a lake of liquid fire and ash. As he turned to bolt for the door, a blackened, skeletal hand clamped onto his ankle. He looked down to see a charred husk of a student crawling toward him. With a scream of pure terror, he kicked himself free and dived through the door into the hallway. Behind him, a massive sound like a localized explosion rocked the building, blowing soot and heat into his back. He woke up in the school's infirmary, gasping for air. A living teacher stood over him, looking concerned. When Rishi hysterically described the fire, the screaming students, and the melting teacher, the man's face grew grim. He led Rishi back to the hall where room 4B stood. The door wasn't open. It was sealed with heavy iron chains and rusted padlocks, the wood blackened and scorched by a fire that had happened long ago. As Rishi walked toward the gate to leave, the old guard was there again. The man whispered the truth. 15 years ago, on this very day, at exactly 10:35 a.m., a student's prank with firecrackers had gone wrong. The room had become a furnace, trapping 40 students and their teacher inside. They were all burned alive before the doors could be opened. Since then, they had been trapped in a loop, looking for a 41st soul to join their eternal exam. Rishi realized then that his lateness hadn't been a curse. It had been the only thing that kept him from being seated when the clock struck the final, fatal minute. He left the school grounds without looking back, the smell of smoke still clinging to his hair, knowing that some lessons are written in fire and can never be forgotten.